grew to atolls in the sea. The fish, the insects, and the nesting birds all played their varied parts, through which a widening community spread across the earth. Thus, as through us the same life flows through all, making us debtor and creditor, brother and sister, each of all, each as the grass springing forth from common earth, adding to others and receiving as well. And all of us, seed, plant, and flower, and seed en route through love and the awakening mind, to what we cannot guess. We're expanding from last week's Donkey and Elephant by Reverend Nina to talk about loving and caring for all animals. This morning, we've had a chance to show that we do just that. Specifically, we love those who share our homes and our beds, let's face it. Recent estimates by the pet industry in America alone say that we own 78 million dogs, 85 million cats, 14 million birds, 12 million small mammals, and 9 million reptiles. So researching the domestication of animals kept for pleasure as opposed to work, it looks like dogs were the first domestic animals. Recently published evidence that dogs were domesticated from wolves in Europe about 16,000 years ago and in Asia 14,000 years ago is being studied to understand how dogs became man's best friend. Not that having a dog as a pet is something that all people want. Here is a humorous poem by Judith Viorst, and it's called Mother Doesn't Want a Dog. Mother doesn't want a dog. Mother says they smell and never sit when you say sit, or even when you yell. And when you come home late at night and there is ice and snow, you have to go back out because the dumb dog has to go. Mother doesn't want a dog. Mother says they shed. And always let the strangers in and bark at friends instead. And do disgraceful things on rugs and track mud on the floor and flop upon your bed at night and snore their doggy snore. Mother doesn't want a dog. She's making a mistake. Because more than a dog, I think she will not want this snake. And of course, we do have to give our cat lovers a poem to enjoy too. It's called My Cat. My cat isn't stuck up, even though he's the handsomest cat in the world, and smart and brave and climbs the highest trees. My cat will sit on your lap and let you pet him. He won't mind. He thinks human beings are almost as good as he is. This morning as we were coming to church, Oliver asked me, "Will there be cows and pigs?" And I said, "No, probably just dogs and cats." "Why?" I said, "Because they don't live with us normally, cows and pigs, although some people do have little pigs. So just dogs and cats, and the occasional reptile showed up this morning." So I ask accordingly that we reflect on the humility that the cat poem suggests, that we humans are not the center of existence. And what is more, that the humane treatment of animals is something that we need to call for still to this day. It's sobering to recall that 150 years ago, this was a bold stand to take. But one Unitarian in 1866 began a crusade that would lead us to this animal blessing service today. Reverend Marguerite Sheehan tells the story of Henry Berg, the founder of the American Society of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, who was a Unitarian from New York City. At that time, animals were routinely beaten, starved, set to fight against each other, and left to die when they were no longer useful. It was animals, primarily horses, that brought Henry Bergh face to face with the kind of injustice that he had learned in his Unitarian church to despise. Bergh was a man of wealth and influence. He could have turned away from animal abuse and forgotten scenes both in Russia, where he was a diplomat, and back home in New York, scenes of carriage drivers beating their horses. But instead, he took these scenes into his heart and his mind. He saw the abuse of animals as being a religious, moral, and ethical travesty. And he said, "This is a matter purely of conscience. It has no perplexing side issues. It is a moral question in all its aspects. It is a solemn recognition of that greatest attribute of the Almighty Ruler of the universe, mercy, which, if suspended in our case, but for a single instant, would overcome and destroy us." Animal abuse called for mercy, Bergh thought, and he was determined to bring mercy to animals. He was unrelenting as he worked with politicians to make laws to protect animals, and he personally patrolled the streets of New York, stopping people from hurting animals, calling in the police to arrest them, and bringing them to trial. Marguerite Sheehan writes about Bergh making his first arrest when he sighted a butcher transporting live calves roped tightly together and stacked up like cordwood. Sometimes the animals' heads hung out over the sides of the transport carts and were crushed against passing vehicles or ground against the wheels of their own cart. Bergh chased that cart all the way from Broadway to the Williamsburg Ferry and got a conviction. In 1866, he founded the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. When founded, the ASPCA was the first and only humane society in the Western Hemisphere, and its formation prompted the New York State Legislature to pass the country's first effective anti-cruelty law. Another thing that Henry Bergh did was to invent a canvas sling to rescue horses, and that sling would later be used on the battlefields of Europe in World War I. In 1875, he co-founded the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. 10 years after legislation to protect animals, Bergh became an advocate in the business of foster care, and children gained some of the same protections as animals did. And so this morning, as we sing our closing hymn, we celebrate the web of life. We give thanks for people like Henry Bergh, whose Unitarian faith led him to live out a belief that all lives on this earth should be protected. Kimberly French writes that Unitarian Universalism can help us sort out our place in the animal kingdom, how we find joy in other animals, how we bless, celebrate, and grieve our bonds with them, how we act on the ethical questions about animal products we consume and resources we devote to pets, and most important, how we can call one another to reverse the imbalance and damage we've done to the earth that all of us animals depend upon. We are all one. It is a miracle of shared and sharing life, as Robert Weston writes, the same life flowing through all that makes us debtor and creditor, brother and sister, each of all. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. Our closing hymn is number